My name is Elena Brooks, and the day I graduated with a master's degree in cyber analytics from the University of Michigan was the day I learned what silence can do to a person. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that hollows you out from the inside. The moment my name echoed. When the announcer called my name. Elena Marie Brooks. The arena erupted in applause. But it wasn't for me. University graduations are loud, chaotic celebrations. Families scream names they can barely pronounce, cry tears they've been carrying for years, and run forward to snap blurry photos of their child holding a rolled-up piece of paper tied with ribbon. Everyone around me had someone. My classmates were swallowed in arms and confetti. Mothers cried into their children's hair. Fathers clapped so hard their palms turned red. Students posed with balloon arches and handmade posters big enough to block the aisle. And then there was me. My eyes drifted down to the front row, the seats I carefully labeled reserved for family the night before because some naive part of me believed they would actually show up. 4 empty chairs stared back. Cold plastic glowing under the stadium lights, untouched, unbothered, unclaimed. My mother wasn't there. My stepfather wasn't there. My younger sister, the one I paid school fees for, wasn't there. It felt like the entire world had turned to look at those empty seats, as if spotlighting the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I had always been alone. I just hadn't accepted it. The photo I faked. When the ceremony ended and everyone rushed into tight circles of family warmth, I walked toward the edge of the crowd, phone in hand, pretending to scroll like I was waiting for someone to find me. No one did. A volunteer photographer tapped my shoulder, smiling politely. "Want a graduation photo?" I could have said no. I could have saved myself the embarrassment. But something inside me needed one good memory, even if it was a lie. "Sure," I said. I lifted the fake diploma, forced my cheeks upward, and smiled like I had a cheering crowd behind the camera. But my hands were trembling so hard he had to take several shots. When he finally showed me the picture, I barely recognized myself, bright smile, bright future, standing alone in a sea of shadows. A perfect portrait of a girl pretending she wasn't breaking. Home, but not really. I returned to my apartment in Ann Arbor, still wearing the cap and gown as if removing them would make the day more real. I hung them by the door, telling myself I'd take them down later. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe when the pain stopped stinging. The silence inside my apartment felt heavier than usual. Why silence always follows disappointment, I don't know, but it wrapped around me like a weighted blanket. I waited for my phone to buzz. A text. A call. Sorry, we couldn't make it. We're proud of you. Anything. Nothing came. I slept with the hallway light on that night because the darkness felt too honest. The text that broke something in me. 3 long days passed before my mother finally texted. My heart jumped at the notification, stupid, hopeful thing that it is. But when I opened it, the words weren't congratulations. They weren't pride. They weren't even acknowledgement. Just, "Elena, send $300 for your sister Mia's cheer banquet. ASAP. No greeting. No emoji. No recognition that I'd just reached the biggest milestone of my life. Nothing that suggested she remembered what day it had been. Just another demand. Another withdrawal from the emotional ATM they called a daughter. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. Not because of sadness, sadness requires someone to mourn. This was something else. A sharp, silent cracking inside me. like a glass cup you drop and catch halfway, cracked but still holding shape. For years I had given everything, money, time, emotional labor, hoping that if I filled every gap, every bill, every emergency, maybe they'd fill the one gap in me that had been empty since childhood. The need to feel chosen. But that text shattered any illusion I had left. So I did something tiny, petty, and deeply necessary. I sent $1. With the note. Congrats. A single dollar, the emotional equivalent of closing a door gently instead of slamming it. But it felt like a slap. The locks. After pressing send, my body moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed my keys, walked to the hardware store 2 blocks away, and bought a new lock, a heavy silver one that felt like control. When I screwed it into my apartment door, a strange calm settled over me. Not happiness. Not relief. But clarity. Changing the lock wasn't about keeping them out. It was about letting myself in. The knocking. That night, the silence returned. But this time, it was different. It felt intentional. Like the world was giving me one breath before taking away the next. Around 10:42 p.m., just when I started dozing off, someone knocked on my door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Slow. Heavy. Purposeful. Not the knock of a neighbor. Not the knock of a delivery driver. The kind of knock that carries history. The kind that whispers your name through the wood. My chest tightened. My breath caught. Because somehow, even before I stood up, I knew exactly who was on the other side. And what they wanted wasn't money this time. It was me. The first knock wasn't loud, but it carried weight. A heavy, slow weight that vibrated through the wooden door and straight into my chest. 10:42 p.m. A time of night when only 2 kinds of people knock. Friends or problems. And I didn't have friends. So I stood frozen, barefoot on my apartment tiles, listening to the sound of my past tapping its way back into my life. The second knock came, this time with the patience of someone who knew I was inside. Someone who wasn't going away. My breath hitched. My heart thudded against my ribs loud enough that I worried they could hear it. I swallowed hard, wiped my hands on my sweatpants, and tiptoed closer. I didn't turn the lights on. Instinct. Training. Trauma. Who knows? But I remained in the dark as I approached the peephole, each step pulling old memories up from the places I'd buried them. I looked. And my knees went weak. Standing in the hallway was my mother. Not the version from childhood, soft hands, bright laugh, warm apron smell. No. This was the modern version. The one molded by guilt, resentment, and a lifetime of making her children responsible for her emotions. Her shoulders were stiff. Her eyes looked tired. Her mouth was pressed in a line that usually preceded a demand. But what bothered me most wasn't her presence. It was the empty hallway behind her. If she was here alone, what did she want? I stepped back, heart pounding, gripping the counter for support. For 30 seconds, I debated pretending I wasn't home. But she knew me too well. She knew I was awake. She knew I heard. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. From her. I know you're inside. Open the door. The third knock was soft. Almost gentle. That frightened me more than anger ever could. The decision. For years, I had been the bridge, the peacemaker, the fixer, the responsible one. But after the graduation they skipped, I promised myself I wouldn't be that girl again. And yet here she was, at my door, threatening to drag me back into the role I had finally abandoned. I inhaled, counted to 3, and opened the door. The confrontation. She didn't even greet me. She brushed past me like she owned the space, like this was her home and I was the visitor. I stood at the doorway, still holding the knob, wondering how someone could walk into your apartment the same way they walk into your life, without permission. I was in the neighborhood, she said, not making eye contact. A lie. My mother lived 3 hours away. I closed the door slowly. What's going on? She turned to face me then, her expression tight. Your sister is crying. Of course. Mia. The golden child. The one whose smallest inconvenience became a national emergency. What happened? I asked, already knowing the answer. You sent her $1, she said, her voice low with disbelief. $1. I exhaled through my nose. Because the request came 3 days after you ignored my graduation. We didn't ignore it, she snapped. Things were chaotic. Chaotic. Her favorite word. A blanket excuse that covered everything from forgetting birthdays to forgetting to pick us up from school. I stared at her, waiting for the truth beneath the lie. She finally scoffed and looked around my apartment. You changed the locks, she said. There it was. The real reason she came. Not for love. Not for concern. Not for reconciliation. Control. Always control. You shut us out, she whispered like I had committed treason. No, I replied softly. You just can't walk in whenever you want anymore. She flinched, not because of the words, but because somewhere inside, she knew they were true. The guilt trap. My mother sighed and sat on the edge of my couch, the same couch I had bought with the money I saved from tutoring. I stood, watching her. Elena, she said, softening her voice. Do you know how hard things have been? Your sister's tuition, the bills, your stepfather's health. I closed my eyes for a moment. There it was, the guilt trap. The invisible net she threw every time she needed money. I'm tired, I said quietly. She paused. Tired? Yes. Tired of being the parent. Tired of doing everything. Tired of begging for the bare minimum. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out, and in that silence, a strange sense of power settled over me. For once, she didn't have a script ready. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking. The breaking point. She straightened her back. So what now? You want to abandon your family? The word abandon hit me like a slap. I laughed, not happily, but painfully. You abandoned my graduation. And now you want to talk about loyalty? Her jaw tightened. She hated being called out. I'm asking for help, she said. For what? Another bill? Another emergency? I asked. Or is this about controlling me again? Her silence answered for her. My throat tightened. A wave of emotion rose, not anger, not sadness, something more complex. Grief. The grief of realizing someone you love has no intention of loving you the way you need. The unexpected truth. Then she said something that made every hair on my arm stand. Mia isn't handling things well, she whispered. She told me you've been distant. Cold. Secretive. My stomach dropped. Secretive? I don't understand, I said. She leaned forward, lowering her voice like the walls had ears. You've been acting strange for months. She says you've been locked away in your room, staying up late, working on things you won't tell anyone about. My heart raced. Because she wasn't wrong. I had been working late. Very late. On something I hoped would change my life forever. Something big. Something dangerous. Something they could never know. How does Mia know that? I asked slowly. My mother gave me a cold, uncomfortable smile. Because your sister has access to more than you think. Something icy crawled down my spine. What does that mean? She stood, walked to the door, and said something that would haunt me for months. Whatever you're hiding, Elena, be careful. We're not the only ones watching. Then she walked out, leaving me alone in the doorway, heart pounding, realizing that my past hadn't just shown up. It had been digging through my life long before tonight. The morning after my mother's unexpected visit felt strangely quiet, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to crack. I woke up with that heavy feeling in my chest that always comes after an emotional earthquake. The kind where you replay every word said, every look exchanged, and wonder if you missed a warning sign hiding in plain sight. I made coffee I didn't feel like drinking and opened my laptop to continue job applications. The screen glowed into the dim apartment, illuminating the undone laundry, the half-eaten cereal bowl, the graduation gown still hanging by the door like a ghost of the life I thought I was walking into. But as soon as I clicked open my email, a thought popped into my mind like a whisper. Check your credit. There was no reason for it. No email alert. No suspicious activity ping. Just instinct. The same instinct that wakes you up seconds before something goes wrong. I opened the credit monitoring app. Then I froze. 2 new inquiries. 2 new credit card accounts. Both opened in the last 48 hours. Both in my legal name. Both using my mother's home address in Grand Rapids, an address I hadn't lived at in years. My stomach twisted. I clicked the first one. The balance hit me like a slap. $3,700 spent. Only $50 remaining. The second card was no different. Nearly maxed. I scrolled through the transactions, my pulse punching against my throat. Grand Rapids Events Hall, $2,800. Elite Glam Studio, $450. DJ Rhythm Nation, $720. A catering company, $500. A custom cake bakery, $420. My eyes blurred. It wasn't random fraud. It wasn't identity theft by a stranger. It was for Mia's lavish cheer banquet, the same event my mother demanded I fund, the same one I refused to pay for, the same event that sparked the midnight confrontation at my door. I kept scrolling, hands trembling uncontrollably. Then I saw it. The line that sucked all the air out of my lungs. Co-applicant, Elena Brooks. My mother. My own mother. I stared at the screen, unable to move, unable to think. Betrayal hits different when it comes from the person who gave you life. It doesn't feel like a stab, it feels like the ground beneath you cracking open, and suddenly you realize you were never standing on solid earth at all. I pressed the call button for the bank. A representative named Amanda answered, cheerful and robotic. Thank you for calling Maple Line Financial. This is Amanda speaking. How may I help you? My identity was stolen, I whispered. She pulled up the account. I waited, heart beating in my throat. "Oh, Ms. Brooks," she said politely. "This account wasn't stolen. It was opened in person at our Grand Rapids branch. Your co-applicant, Linda Brooks, signed all documentation. Both your names and IDs were verified." "My ID?" I breathed. My knees wobbled. "Yes. A copy of your driver's license was provided. I hadn't given my mother a copy of my ID since I was 17. You'll need to file a fraud report," she continued. "But because this involves a family member, the bank will require a police case number before proceeding." A police report. Against my mother. I ended the call. And then I did something I'd never done before. I opened my voice recorder. Everything around me fell silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to fade. Only my heartbeat remained loud, fast, determined. I steadied my voice. I hit record. Then I dialed my mother. She picked up on the fourth ring, breath sharp, irritated. "Oh, so now you call," she snapped. I swallowed. "Mom, why did you open credit cards in my name?" Silence. Then a scoff. A familiar, dismissive sound, the sound she used whenever she felt cornered. "I was helping you build credit," she said. "And you should be grateful. Families share finances, Elena. What's yours is ours. That's how families work." My chest tightened. "No," I said quietly. "What's mine is mine. And what you did is fraud." "You wouldn't dare report me," she hissed. "I already did." Silence. Dead, cold silence. Then the sound of her breathing, shallow, angry, disbelieving. A sound I had never heard from her. Fear. "You'd betray your own mother," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "You betrayed me long before this." When the call ended, my hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. But I saved the recording. And I gave it a name I would never forget. Boundary, May 22nd. I stared at the title for a long time, feeling something shift inside me. Not regret. Not guilt. Not fear. Clarity. There are moments in life when the final piece of the puzzle clicks into place, when you finally see someone for who they truly are, not who you kept hoping they would become. This was that moment. The girl who spent her life begging for love. The girl who carried everyone's burdens. The girl who tolerated disrespect because she hoped things would get better. That girl died the moment I hit save on that recording. And something else was born in her place. Something colder. Something sharper. Something that had been sleeping inside me, waiting for the right wound to wake it. Not revenge. Not yet. Just the first spark of it. The beginning of a transformation. And the beginning of a plan. The diner smelled of burnt toast and old conversations, the kind of place where people come to hide their problems under plates of scrambled eggs. I chose it intentionally. Neutral ground. No one's home turf. No emotional advantage. I sat in the booth first, facing the door, watching the snow melt on the pavement outside. My hands were steady, but inside, my chest was a battlefield, anger, sadness, betrayal, all tangled together. It felt strange to be the one in control. Almost unreal. At exactly 3:14 p.m., the bell above the door jingled. My mother entered first. Oversized sunglasses. Hair too perfect for a weekday. The walk of someone preparing to be pitted. My stepfather followed behind her, shoulders hunched, eyes down, playing his usual role, silent shadow. Then my sister Mia walked in, clicking gum, scrolling on her phone, wearing the confidence of a girl who had never been told no a day in her life. They slid into the booth across from me like this was a family brunch. I didn't smile. "We're not eating," I said. "We're talking." My mother lifted her chin. "You could at least greet us properly." I reached into my bag slowly, deliberately, and placed a manila folder on the table. A folder that held the answer to every question they pretended not to understand. "What's this?" she asked, her voice shrinking. "2 credit cards," I said. "Both opened in my name. Both maxed out. Both using your address." Her fingers trembled slightly when she touched the folder. She hadn't expected me to be calm. She expected tears, fear, apologies, not this. "You're overreacting," she said, trying for a smile. "I did it for you. To help you build credit." I laughed, an unfiltered, sharp laugh that cut through the diner's chatter like a knife. Several people turned to look. "Build credit?" I said. "Mom, you forged my identity to throw a luxury banquet for Mia. Then you marched into my apartment at night and tried to guilt-trip me like I was the villain." My mother's jaw tightened. Mia finally looked up from her phone. "Why are you being so dramatic?" Mia asked. I stared at her. "You spent almost $8,000 in 2 days." She shrugged. "It's not my fault you freak out over money." My stepfather shifted nervously, but said nothing, as usual. I took a deep breath. Then I said the one thing guaranteed to shake my mother. "The bank has already opened an investigation." She froze. Her skin drained of color. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. Her sunglasses suddenly felt like a shield too thin to hide behind. "This will ruin us," she whispered. Then she leaned forward, choking on desperation. "Elena, please. We can fix this quietly. Just tell the bank you authorized it." "No," I said softly. "You ruined it the moment you decided my name was your emergency fund." Her eyes glistened, not with remorse, but fear. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because you left me alone on the biggest day of my life," I said. "Because you used me. Because you never once asked if I was okay. And because you taught me that silence is safer than honesty. But not anymore." I stood. The chair scraped against the floor, loud, final. "I'm done being your safety net." I placed the folder back in my bag and walked out of the diner, leaving them in a booth full of unfinished lies. That night, Grand Rapids Events Hall glowed with gold lights like a palace. Mia's big moment. Her cheer banquet. The event that drained 2 fraudulent credit cards. I wasn't invited. But my name was on every receipt. I was back in my apartment in Ann Arbor when my phone rang. Unknown number. A professional voice. "Hello, Ms. Brooks. This is the legal department for Capital One. Officers and bank representatives are being dispatched to verify fraudulent charges at the Grand Rapids Events Hall." I closed my eyes. Everything was in motion now, a machine I hadn't meant to activate but couldn't stop. At 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from Mia. "What did you do? Police are here. Mom is crying. People are filming." I didn't respond. I sat by my window instead, watching the streetlights flicker as clouds gathered. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't celebrating either. It was steady, painfully steady. Across the state, Officers walked into the banquet hall. No sirens. No shouting. Just quiet accountability. A bank representative opened a folder, probably the same kind of folder I'd used earlier. He read aloud. Primary applicant, Linda Brooks. Cosigner, unauthorized. Victim, Elena Brooks. Gasps. Whispers. The music stopped. The DJ disconnected the speakers. People pulled out their phones. Cameras flashed. My mother stood under the glowing lights, mascara streaking down her cheeks, dress clinging to her like guilt. Mia stood beside her, face pale, mouth hanging open as guests slipped out the doors like smoke. The golden decorations sagged. The catered food sat untouched. The entire hall fell apart in slow motion. And then, as if the universe wanted to punctuate the moment, rain began to fall. A thin drizzle at first. Then heavy. Sharp. Cold. My mother stood outside in it, the woman who once taught me to carry umbrellas. Now soaking. Shivering. Exposed. I didn't record the moment. I didn't cheer. I didn't send a text. I simply watched the storm from my window and whispered to myself. Public justice is loud. Personal healing is whisper quiet. And for the first time in my life, I chose the quiet. 3 days later, the final email arrived. I had been pacing the apartment, the city lights spilling across my kitchen counter, the soft hum of traffic below a lullaby and a warning all at once. My phone buzzed, and my hands instinctively froze mid-step. Fraud confirmed. Primary applicant, Linda Brooks acknowledges unauthorized use. She will repay $9,714 in full. No apology. No excuses. Just truth, etched into a digital document that I downloaded and printed immediately. I held the paper in my hands, feeling the weight of years of manipulation, disregard, and betrayal finally fall into a tangible, physical form. I wasn't sure whether to cry or laugh first. Instead, I did something I hadn't allowed myself to do in years. I exhaled. Slowly. Fully. As if my lungs had been holding on to a storm for decades and were finally allowed to empty. In Grand Rapids, news traveled like wildfire. Rumors ignited faster than the drizzle turning into a downpour. Neighbors whispered over fences. Coworkers leaned too close by the office coffee machine, murmuring about the family drama and the viral clips from Mia's banquet disaster. TikTok had a field day. 30 seconds of chaos, a mother flustered and dripping in the rain, a golden child frozen in disbelief, a DJ unplugging equipment mid-song. Within hours, the video had thousands of views, climbing steadily as people added commentary. Imagine stealing your kid's sibling's identity for a party. I didn't respond. Not to messages. Not to calls. Not even to texts from friends forwarding links or reactions. I didn't reply, and it wasn't out of spite. It was a quiet, deliberate choice. For the first time, I realized, peace doesn't come from confrontation. Peace comes from choosing yourself unapologetically, unwaveringly, and without compromise. I went through the motions that needed doing, filing an official identity theft affidavit, freezing every account linked to my family, closing old financial ties I had neglected in the haze of obligation. Each click, each form, each call was a tiny exhale, a reclaiming of space that had been stolen from me for years. Every line filled with my name, my signature, my truth, reminded me I was finally standing on solid ground, my own. Then I pinned 3 things on the wall above my desk, side by side. My diploma. The symbol of late nights, sacrifice, and relentless determination. The proof that I had earned something on my own, without them, in spite of them, the fraud resolution letter. The paper that proved I would no longer be a victim. That even when my own blood betrayed me, the system recognized the truth of my claim, the old lock I had replaced. Metal and mechanism, a silent witness to the night I drew the line. The night I chose boundaries over fear, autonomy over obligation. 3 objects. 3 markers. 3 truths. What I built. What I protected. What I reclaimed. Looking at them, I realized I had stitched a new identity from the threads of my old one, stronger, wiser, and unshakable. 6 months later, I boarded a train bound for Chicago. A new city, a new apartment, a new life. I had been hired as a cybersecurity analyst at Apex Data Systems, a position that gave me not just a paycheck, but autonomy, respect, and the power to protect what mattered. I unpacked my boxes slowly, deliberately, arranging my apartment in a way I had never dared before. Soft lamps, quiet corners, the subtle smell of coffee and old books. No one knocked. No one barged in unannounced. No one asked for handouts, favors, or loyalty at the expense of my own sanity. For the first time in my adult life, silence didn't sting. Silence healed. Silence reminded me that I could exist without explanation, without apology, without compromise. I walked to my kitchen window one evening and watched Chicago's lights pulse against the lake. The city was vast, indifferent, alive, and I was part of it on my own terms. My heart was steady. My hands no longer shook. My past no longer haunted every step. I thought about my mother. About Mia. About the years I had sacrificed for approval that never came. I didn't feel anger anymore, not the bitter, suffocating kind. I felt clarity. Justice had been served quietly, efficiently, perfectly. And the best part? It hadn't required me to shout. To beg. To plead. The storm was over. And the wreckage? I didn't need to clean it. I had moved far enough away that it belonged to them now. Let them deal with the aftermath of their own choices. I made myself a cup of tea, my hands wrapping around the warm ceramic. I sat by the window, watching city traffic move like a river below. I realized then that the hardest battles aren't fought in public. They're fought quietly, in bedrooms and offices, in bank calls and legal forms, in choosing the self over the convenience of pleasing others. And sometimes, victory is subtle. Sometimes, it's in the absence of chaos rather than its eruption. I smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. This was my life now. My rules. My boundaries. My freedom. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to love you but didn't, who manipulated, ignored, or took from you, know this: you are not alone. There is power in stepping back. Power in saying, enough. Power in finally choosing yourself. I picked up my phone and typed a single message to no one in particular. To anyone watching, anyone surviving, anyone standing up, you are not alone. Tell me where you're watching from. And as I pressed send, I realized that sometimes, the quietest choices make the loudest impact. I brewed another cup of tea. The city hummed outside. My diploma, my fraud letter, my old lock glimmered in the lamplight. I had built a life that no one could touch, and for the first time, I felt invincible. This was not just survival. This was victory. And in that moment, I knew, no storm, no betrayal, no shadow of the past could ever reach me again. I had finally changed the locks, not just on my door, but on my life. If this story has touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength, or even sparked a thought you've been avoiding, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your story below. Tell me where you're watching from. Let's see how many of us finally changed the locks in our own lives. Remember, some storms pass, but the lessons and the victories stay with you forever. And sometimes, the most satisfying victories are the ones you don't have to announce. They simply exist. You. Your peace. Your rules. Your life.